So it is lesson 5 of COMP1006 Intro to Web Programming. We are lucky. We are Georgian students because we are not Lakehead students. Because Lakehead, if any of you have heard, I teach one of the courses on our Lakehead program. Lakehead is actually under a cyber attack. So they don't use Blackboard, they use D2L. So D2L is down, email is down, the Lakehead main website is down. Fortunately, we have access to everything today, and it's actually reading week for Lakehead. It doesn't impact us too much. So what are we doing today? We're going to do a little review of Git and GitHub. We introduced it last week, and people are starting to work with it, but I want to go over it so that we can start to raise your comfort level with Git, and you're going to get more and more comfortable as we do more and more with it. We're going to use Bootstrap to do a little more formatting in our PHP gaming site. So we'll look at some of the other sort of CSS classes and some of the other layout options that come with the Bootstrap CSS framework that we started to incorporate previously. And then I'm just going to open up the rest of the class so that I can help people who are working on assignment 1. So assignment 1 is due next week. It's due on Tuesday at 5 o'clock, not at midnight, but 5 o'clock next Tuesday before our next class. There's no quiz this week. Okay, so all I want you to do for next week is work on assignment 1. Okay. So before we start, we're going to do a couple quick exercises in terms of reviewing with GitHub. Just want you to think back to last week's class when we worked with Git, or some of you have started working with it already in your assignments. If you use the chat, tell me one thing you learned or one thing you remember about Git or GitHub from last week's class. Just what comes off the top of your head. Okay, so Felix remembers Git Add and Git Commit and Push. All right, so you remember some of those commands, right? Every time we want to make a new version, we're going to add all the files. We're going to make a new commit or a new version and give it some kind of message. And then we're going to push or we're going to upload. That's great, Felix. Thanks. Anybody else? What did you learn about Git last week? Just the first thing that comes to mind. Okay, that's right, Tanya. So primarily there are some graphical interfaces, but primarily and traditionally, yeah, it's done through the terminal or the command line. All right, Colton, you learned how useful it is. And Colton, what are some of the reasons that it's useful? Or what's one reason you can think of, or anybody, that it's useful? Yep, easy to collaborate with other people. Yep, David said right. It stores our code online, so we can both collaborate and we have control of our versions. So great answers. Anybody else? Tell me one thing that you now know about Git or GitHub that you didn't know before last week's class that you can remember. Oh, yes. Yeah, sorry, David. Didn't mean to overlook the sorcery. It seems like it. Anything else that sticks in your mind that you can remember about Git or GitHub that you didn't know 2 weeks ago? Okay, yeah, we can pull back, as Felix said, we can pull back to a previous or roll back to a previous version. Morning, Jake. So that's great if we have a working project, and then we add some new feature and we break something, we have the ability to instantly just roll back to an earlier version. Our code doesn't get overwritten. That's great, Felix. Anything else? Okay, so we've got a pretty good list. Feel if there's anything else. Yeah, we can merge our code into different branches. That's right. So if we've got different kind of trees, different sections of our code where we're working on something, when our code is ready to go, we can merge it in to a testing or a production branch. Yeah, we can also compare different versions. So we can see on GitHub exactly what changes there are. It lets us compare side by side, and it shows us what's been added, what's been removed, what's been changed. All right, those are some really useful answers. So what we're going to do, I'm going to pause the recording. Yes, we can. It can be easy to delete the code. True. So we're going to do another little review activity here in groups. So we're going to use the breakout groups. I'm going to pause the recording and my screen share in a minute. So I'm going to divide, let's see how many, almost everybody's here, which is great. So I'm going to put everybody in, you're going to get automatically assigned into a breakout group. And I've got 8 questions here on Blackboard in the lesson 5 folder, 8 review questions about Git. Okay. If you're in breakout room 1, you're going to be assigned the first 2 questions. What is Git? Why is it widely used? What does the git init command and when do we use it? If you're in breakout group 2, you're going to answer questions 3 and 4. If you're in breakout room 3, you're going to answer questions 5 and 6. And breakout room 4, you're going to answer questions 7 and 8. Now, where do you put the answers and how do you answer them? I will tell you. There's a link here to a OneDrive PowerPoint slide. So I want you to open up this file. And please choose Edit in Browser. Don't download the file. If you download it, the file will get locked for everybody. So I want you to edit it in the browser. So there's 8 questions that collaboratively we're going to answer. There's 9 slides. So the first one is just our title slide. So breakout group 1, you've got 2 slides, slides 1, 2, and 3. So what I want you to do is answer the question and then try to find an image that helps answer the question, kind of gives a visual, a lot of visual learners in the class. So I want you to replace the placeholder image with some kind of useful image that kind of describes the answer. Okay, so every slide, you can replace this, add your notes, and I want you to find an image online as a group and replace the placeholders. So if you're in breakout room 1, you're doing slides 2 and 3. If you're in breakout room 2, you're doing slides 4 and 5. Breakout room 3, you get slides 6 and 7. Breakout room 4, you get slides 8 and 9. So when we're done, we should have a full review, a shared slide deck that has images and some text descriptions. And you can use this as a really kind of quick and handy reference when you're working with Git and GitHub moving forward. Okay. I think probably you'll need about, I would say maybe till about 11:30, though I can do a check-in. If everyone's done before that, we'll end the breakout sooner. If everyone needs more time, we can allocate a little more time to this. Okay, so I will start the breakout groups in a minute, and you're going to work together on the 2 slides that are assigned to your group. And there is a mark for participating in this activity. It's kind of like an in-class lab. Instead of a coding lab, we're going to work collaboratively on this slide deck. So just by being here and participating in the class, you'll be eligible for that. Are there any questions from anybody about the activity before I start the breakout groups? All right, I'll pause my recording here. So we've done a little kind of collaborative Git review. So I've actually counted this as an in-class lab. So just by participating, I've given you all a mark already under this. It's called the week 5. I've put it in as week 5 learning activity on Blackboard. So we'll do some more of this, sort of as opposed to, either me just lecturing all the time or giving you more labs to do at home. Some of these activities that we can do together in class, they'll just count towards your final mark. So maybe just have a look. I looked at the comments and what's here. Maybe I'll just play the slideshow so we can see the images better. So yeah, Git is a version control system. It tracks our files, it gives us access, and it allows us to collaborate. And Git is kind of the leader. So we can see here an individual repository and Git project tracking through GitHub. So we use Git init to initialize Git to start watching a particular project. Okay. And part of the key here, it's a one-time command that allows us to start a repository, and it turns the directory in, this should be a directory, into a local Git repository. So when we run the command git init, we get this message, initialized empty Git repository, and it creates this little hidden folder called .git. We can see that. So thanks, group 1. Oh, your other one, I like this visual as well. So Git Add adds a change to the staging area. So it tells Git that we're going to want to update, that something has changed in our project. It could be work within an existing file. It could be files are added, renamed, deleted. Something's been changed. But it says don't process the change until we run the next commit, right? So here's our workflow. From the working directory, we add our changes to a staging area. And then we prepare to commit those changes to our repository. Thanks, group 1. So here are group 2 slides. So commit is taking a snapshot. So after we have added changes to staging, commit, and our -m, this lets us put in a descriptive message so we can say, what did we do in this version? And this is really important. And this is something, looking at some of assignment 1 repositories, I've noticed some people are just uploading, dragging and dropping through GitHub. When you do this, we don't get descriptive messages. And this is a problem. So if you've started working with GitHub and dragging and dropping your files, I want you to get out of that habit, and we need to start using the command line so that we can descriptively name our commits. So git remote add allows us to add a connection to another repository, typically to an online repository on GitHub. It's kind of like a bookmark. And yeah, it's a convenient name. So here we've got 2 remote connections from our local repository. So one into the central repository on GitHub, for example, but we can also just pass the origin as a shortcut to somebody else. And Git Push pushes or updates an existing remote. Okay, so we've got our project here on our computer. We add changes and commit them. We then want to copy those changes. We want to push them up to GitHub. So our steps are always going to be, and I think Felix mentioned this earlier in the chat, we're going to add our changes, we're going to commit a new version, and then we push to upload those changes. So those are going to be the regular commands we repeat all the time. Git add, git commit, and git push. In fact, when I'm working in class and we take a break, I always do an add, commit, and push. So whatever code we've worked on in that hour of class, I've uploaded it to GitHub when we take a break. So we haven't really talked about Git Pull. We looked at Git Push. So Git Pull is the opposite. If pushing is uploading from our local repository to an online repository to GitHub, pull is the opposite. it retrieves or pulls changes from the online repository and downloads them to our local version. So it's kind of like running two commands at once. It's a fetch and then a merge. So we would use pull if we want to update our repository to see what's new. So especially when we're collaborating with other people. So let's say, for example, Ariel and I are working on a project together. I work during the day, Ariel works at night. So I work during the day, 5 o'clock, I push my code up to GitHub. Ariel likes to work late at night. So at 8 o'clock at night, when she opens up her computer and opens up the project, the first thing she should do is do a Git pull. This will download the changes I've uploaded, download them, so she's working off the newest copy. When she finishes working for the night, she's going to push. And the next day when I start working in the morning, again, I'm going to do a pull so I can download and sync all of the changes that Ariel made in the evening once I was done working for the day. So we don't use pull a lot if we're working on our own. Pull is more for when we are collaborating with other people. Great answers. So branches allow us to separate out. So if we've got typically a master branch, this is like the live branch that would go on our server and be running, but we can make changes, basically make a copy and work on those changes without interfering with the master branch. Maybe I'm working over here and maybe someone else makes their own branch, they make a copy, and then when we're done making our updates, we can merge or sync these back in to the master branch. So really good visuals and good explanation from everyone. So this file, I'll just leave it up here. You can find the link always through the lesson 5, but so you can always use this kind of as a review. Here's just the basics with some screenshots, in addition to the resources I uploaded last week. Okay, so we've got all the commands we need. Was this useful at all in terms of reinforcing some of what we talked about last week? You can tell me the truth. My feelings aren't hurt if it's not useful. Okay, thanks, David. Good to know. Anybody else? Yep, okay. And that's part of the idea, right? Is also to remove some of the isolation and get us talking together. Anybody else? Was this useful for you? Not really useful? Okay, thanks, Nafise. It's good to review. Okay, yeah, you like having the descriptions? Okay, Ariel, and that's totally normal. So Git is complex, and it does take a little while to get it. There's nothing wrong with that. It took me a while to get it as well. So that's totally normal. You know, both with Git as well as with PHP, I think in working with both of these tools, for many people, there's sort of a light bulb moment at some point where it's kind of like all the different things we've been doing, it all sort of, there's like this, aha, I get now how all of this works. But typically we need to practice and get our hands dirty with it. And the more we do it, kind of the sooner that light bulb moment arrives. But these are skills like any other skill. You know, it's like learning how to, it's like learning how to, ski or skate or play an instrument. You know, we do them at first and everything feels awkward and we have to think about what we're doing. And, you know, we might pick up an instrument. It doesn't really sound like music for a while, but it's through practice and repetition that we start to develop that kind of internal memory, and suddenly what we're doing makes sense. So don't feel bad if you still don't. I don't expect you to have a full grasp on it. That's to be expected. But we'll keep working with it, again, not just in this course, but all through our courses together next year. So you're going to be totally comfortable working with this stuff soon enough. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to leave that slide deck. I'll leave this file up on OneDrive. Actually, just for comparison, here was the review. This was the class. So I did this activity last winter. And we can see the visuals. So this is the group that's in semester 4 now. So they've kind of put in similar notes. I'm not going to read them all to you, but you'll see they've used similar kind of images and descriptions. I decided to reuse this activity since it went fairly well last year. So they included a little screenshot. Here's our sequence: add dot, commit -m, and push. They gave the sample code again here under commit. Description of remote add. Similar to visuals to what you guys found for pushing from our working directory to staging to a local repository to the remote repository. How pull kind of does the opposite. Pull is downloading to our workspace. And branching, really almost similar diagram. So you guys came up with similar notes. And if you went and talked to anybody that's in year 2, I'm sure they'll tell you that their comfort level is probably pretty high with Git and GitHub by now. Now, there are some visual tools as well. Git is actually baked into some of the programs we use, but I think for learning it, it makes sense that we use, as Tanya mentioned, use the terminal and use the command line, because when we repeat the commands, we start to familiarize and get comfortable with them after some time. Okay, it is 11:48 by my clock. So we will want to do a little bit of formatting. We're going to do a whole lot of PHP heavy lifting with our PHP gaming site. But we're going to do a little more work with Bootstrap in terms of cleaning it up and adding some more layout and style to it. Let's take a break here. We will come back at noon. We'll spend a little bit of time adding Bootstrap, and then I'll just open up the rest of the time till 2 o'clock for assignment help with anybody who needs it. Okay, so let's come back at 12, and we'll do some more formatting with Bootstrap.